Hey there. So I want to continue my celebration of the U.S. Army and commemoration of its achievements during World War II. I'm here in the great state of Wyoming at F.E. Warren Air Force Base. This place has a very interesting history. This was a U.S. Army post starting in 1867 to provide protection for settlers in the railroad back in that time frame. And then it transitioned to the name Fort Warren, which is named after the first governor of Wyoming. And then it turned into F.E. Warren Air Force Base later on when it got transitioned in 1947 to the Air Force. So some interesting facts about July 25th, 1944 is that the U.S. Army had been bogged down in the Normandy region after the June 6th invasion on D-Day. They had fought for 46 days to get 10 miles inland, which isn't very far considering the amount of effort and lives lost trying to get that far. So they were really bogged down. The Germans were doing an excellent job of defending the region, and that area supported their tactics because it suppressed the Americans' tactics in the bocage area, which is what the name of this area is called, which in French means hedgerow. So this hedgerow region was very tight, very densely packed with these hedgerows, which were really a mound of dirt with a real tight web of bushes on top of it, and it was impossible to get through those things with, you know, if a tank went through there, it drove up over the berm and would expose its underbelly, and the Germans could take the tank out. And so you really were restricted to where the openings were, and all these hedgerows marked the fields where crops were laid by farmers, and they've been around for thousands of years, so they were very tightly woven. You couldn't like just walk through the bushes. And so the Germans had a distinct advantage during this time. But during this time, they came up with something called a rhino, which was mounted to a Sherman tank. And this rhino was essentially metal teeth that was taken from scrap metal left on the beaches of Normandy. And they cut it apart and attached it to the tanks. But when General Bradley saw this during a demonstration, he said, "Don't display this to the enemy before we actually do the breakout. I don't want them to know we have it." So when they actually did the breakout, these tanks were able to go through the bocage and cut through the hedgerows and make holes that weren't there before, and this totally took the Germans by surprise. There were several other things going on at this time that were very important. Some background was on July 20th, just a couple days before this, there was an assassination attempt on Hitler, and of course that failed, but a part of the Germans' high leadership issue was them trying to figure out who was a part of this, you know, who was a part of the effort to try to take out Hitler. So that was going on in the background. On the German side, the German soldiers were also being taken out during this fighting, and they were not being replaced. So the more soldiers they lost, the more that they were just without. They just couldn't fight. Whereas the Americans had forces coming on the beachhead all the time, as well as supplies. The key to this, and an interesting fact, so in the 46 days that they had from June 6th until July 25th, the U.S. Army had 11,000 casualties. Casualty doesn't mean killed, but it means wounded or killed, but basically removed off the line. And so they had 11,000 casualties. What that means, by percentage, 100% of the soldiers that started the D-Day invasion on June 6th were casualties. And 150% of the officers were casualties, which means every officer had been wounded, taken off the line, replaced with another officer, and then 50% of those new officers were then wounded also. So this was a major endeavor by the U.S. Army to not only go to Normandy and take that land, but then also fight for it, and the amount of people that we put to make that a success. It was a major undertaking, and July 25th marks when they broke out of that, and they were able to start their movement both south into the Brittany region and also east. And this really was successful, with Patton arriving in avalanches and able to start sweeping southward and securing that region. So it was amazing that the U.S. Army in 46 days made 10 miles, and within the next week they made over 40 miles. So major achievements through the breakout of the Bocage region in Normandy, and it was a spectacular event the U.S. Army was able to achieve, and the success of the rest of the war was based on their success during Operation Cobra. So if you have time, please watch the videos that are in the comments linked below. They will give you a much better description. Again, these videos are not as much a video you have to watch, it's something you can listen to, because it's mostly just still pictures rotating through, and some of them don't really even match the time frame that they're talking about, but it's something you can listen to, especially if you're doing something like, you know, work in the yard or something that you can just listen to. Just have the audio on and get the information. So I'll link a couple of different videos in there that talk about Operation Cobra, massive event in U.S. Army's history and major event towards the success of the entire invasion of Normandy. Thank you for your time, and look forward to talking to you more later.